Single fathers, we are the chief cook and bottle washers of our entire family unit. It also means that we're blessed to be seen in our children's eyes as superheroes. We get the chance to participate in all the milestones of their lives. Now, the single fathering experience, it may be difficult during that parenting journey. The benefits, they greatly outweigh the challenges. I'm going to have a conversation with you about a real dirty word. It's really not that dirty of a word, but the American lexicon seems to want to acquaint it to things like bad words and swears. They just want to ignore it. The word, it's insurance. Now, I want to explain why insurance is valuable to a single father. It's valuable to everyone, but especially to a single father. Over 60% of the American population actually has some form of insurance. 40%, on the other hand, they don't have anything at all. Now, what I talk about in the way of insuring yourself, you see, insurance is not just for financial stability. It addresses your emotional and your mental wherewithal as well. That's why it's so important for a single father to invest in some form of insurance. 33% of Americans feel that they're actually underinsured. And there are statistics that back that up. Aflac and Bankrate.com talk about the fact that the average American that has insurance has about $168,000 worth of insurance. Now, the number sounds like it should be sound, but when you break it down, it's really not at all. Look at it like you have a three-family household. You know, mother, father, one child. Something happens. Now, that 168,000 divided by 2, that's roughly, what is it, like 83 grand a piece. And over time, that money can get eaten up very quickly. When you think about it, our debt rate is roughly $105,000. So the American debt is pretty heavy. And roughly 44% of Americans will be in some form of financial stability, or rather, some form of financial instability when they lose someone. 44%. That means they're going to go below the rate of poverty. Now think about this. You spend all your time working hard to take care of your family for years. You pass away and you have roughly $168,000 worth of insurance. That may take care of your family's livelihood for about a year, maybe two. If you love your family the way you claim to love your family, wouldn't you want to leave a legacy to make sure that the household that you have protected while you were alive will continue to flourish when you pass? Or, in your mind, do you feel like your obligations are done when you die and everybody else has to just simply fend for themselves? See, that's what you're telling your loved ones when you don't make the necessary plans that you need to make. Now, insurance is expensive. I understand that. But think about this. The American debt rate, like I just talked about, is roughly $105,000. We spend money on temporary pleasures or pleasures that may make us look good to the outside. Take a wedding, for example. You want that incredible wedding. You want it for yourself. But also, you want everyone else to be able to talk about how incredible the wedding was. Some people purchase rings that may be worth $5,000, $10,000. And what they want to do is show it off. The ring is for themselves. But also, think about this. How many times have you heard people say, girl, look what he bought me? You want the outside to be able to see a lot of your perceived happiness. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you truly love someone, the first thing that you should want to take care of is their livelihood. We spend so much money on, like I said, the fancy weddings, the rings, the honeymoon, the down payment of the house, the nice car. But we put the true financial stability on the back burner. We rely on our paychecks and we assume that that's going to get us through. And for the most part, for a time period, that will. But look at it this way. When something happens, because it's guaranteed to happen, we're not all going to live forever. And any day can be your last day. So making the preparations to have a plan in place to help cover not only the monetary circumstances, but also the emotional and the mental. Because when someone you love passes, you're going to go through a stage of mourning. And that mourning period, you don't want it to be bogged down with the outside influences, the wolves at the door, asking for their money, because truthfully, they don't care that you've lost someone special. They want their money. So now you have that added pressure while you're attempting to heal and learn something new about yourself in this mourning process. Because remember, you're going to be without your me. And at one time, your mate took care of 50% of your lifestyle. You know, you may have been the breadwinner of the household, and the other person was the caregiver. They cooked, they cleaned, they took care of the house, or a two income household where both people worked. And now you have to find a way to manage the circumstance on your own. You have to be 100%. Here's where the emotional and the mental aspects of life insurance step in. You see, when the wolves are coming at the door with life insurance, what you can do is actually do the math, set up a bank account, look at how much you spend per month. And if you're a two-parent household, you can divide the number in half. But at the end of the month, you basically multiply that monthly number by 12. And then you put that money away in the bank. And you set up a bank account for automatic draft with all of your bills. So your mortgage, your rent, your car note, those really important things are being automatically drafted. And you're not focusing and concentrating on them while you're focusing on healing through your mourning process. And you don't want the added pressure of having financial obligations that you need to address. Simultaneously, you want to have the time to be able to navigate your mourning process, understand what's new, understand how to walk through it. Because those added pressures, they actually produce an effect that can be damaging to your psyche. There's actually a phenomenon called grief brain. And what grief brain is, if you end up forgetting a lot of things, there's a big period where you're just trying to block things out. And the mind's trying to protect you. So you'll end up forgetting the important things. Things like, oh, I need to pay the rent, I need to pay the mortgage, I need to pay the car note. But like I said before, if you have a system in place where you're set up so that there's a bank account that's addressing these things on automatic draft, instead of having to focus and nitpick each and every time to remember when to make that payment, you actually can check your bank statement at the end of the month and know that those particular things are being addressed. Realize that making sure that your family unit is protected is the most important thing. You want to believe that all your hard work, everything that you've done through your life, is giving you what you need. And you want to know that when you're gone, your family will remain. because your love shouldn't die when you do. You should make sure that you put proper plans in place. It's amazing because the mental challenges that we face when you lose somebody, it's extreme. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Zuling Zhao out of a university in China. Her and her her and her cohorts, they actually did a study. And that study, they actually talked about it in the journal Frontiers of Psychology. And in that study, it talked about the the effects of love are similar to the effects of drug addiction. That paper was actually backed up by another scientist, Helen Fleischer, and her team did a similar study, and it was also recorded in Frontiers of Psychology, talking about the effects like the dopamine hormones that we feel, that feel good hormone, the levels equate to the two from love and addiction. Now, think about this. You lose someone special, and you have to quit that whole thing cold turkey. I mean, it's like being on cocaine or being on heroin. You know, and coke is pretty hard to just quit cold turkey. And heroin, you already know that you can't quit that cold turkey because there can be physical damages associated with that. You have to bring those levels down. And I talked about how the brain's neurotransmitters have to shift. The brain also, remember, it affects so many other regions of our body. It affects our stomach, our heart, our lungs, and we incur illnesses. Giving yourself a proper time horizon to be able to readjust is important. And life insurance can help you in that respect. And let me acquaint us back to why I feel single fathers truly need to examine this. Because one, realize that because it's just you, you're going to need to make sure that there is some financial stability in place for both you and your children. So think about this. If you have a good emotional EQ and you're able to speak with your child's mother and you come together and ensure one another and say, if something happens to me, I want to make sure that you can have a financial circumstance available that will give you time to heal during the mourning process and will actually give your children time to heal. Because remember, they have lost their parent. And you, as a single parent, will have to navigate that. And especially a single father has to understand that we're not built, men are not built to be nurturers. We have to acquire that skill set. That is part of learning. Like I mentioned in the NPR article, grief is a form of learning. You'll have to learn how to navigate through the experience. But also, you have to shift your mind. Your mindset has to not be focused on the challenges. The challenges have to be seen as opportunities for growth. And remember, everything you learn works to your advantage. And I am talking from sheer experience. I lost my wife back in 2016. And I was blessed because in 2013, my wife unfortunately lost her sister. And when she lost her sister only had a job insurance policy worth about $100,000. And me and my wife started talking and said, well, we need to look at some additional factors. You see, my wife was a school teacher. She had a great job, great opportunity, had good life insurance and health insurance. Meaning I was independent. I worked in insurance. And I didn't have that kind of backup plan. So we made a decision to insure each other for a healthy amount. Now, it wasn't cheap, not at all. But we decided to get a 30-year life insurance policy so that if something happened to either of us, we'd be able to manage our day-to-day and be able to make sure that our children are kept in the comfort that we've always kept them in. Things change when someone dies. But if you have a backup plan, an insurance policy to help address that, then you can set up a plan. But like I said before, you can put a lot of your bills on automatic draft. That gives you a time horizon to be able to navigate through your new learning process to address your mourning. And for a man, that new learning process is very steep. You may have to learn how to do things like cook and clean. You have to learn how to organize your schedule and the schedule of your children. Remember, at one time, you could rely on your other half to do certain things. That's no longer the case. So in addition to the financial instability of not having insurance, you now have to deal with an emotional, a mental, from both the inside and the outside. If you don't have some type of proper insurance plan in place, those levels are extremely high. Now, don't get me wrong, insurance will not mitigate your levels of stress or anxiety or your symptoms of depression. But what it will do is lower the effects. And your goal should be to lower as much as you can. Because remember, you're taking on a brand new circumstance. You're learning. You're looking to figure out the best ways to be able to navigate through this challenging experience. And if you have children, then you're also having to help them navigate through the experience of losing their parent. You, you must understand here that utilizing life insurance to help you create a time horizon is valuable. And there are so many different types of insurance. A, a lot of people want a whole life plan for a lot of money. But remember, that is expensive, extremely expensive. But you can look at investing in a term life policy for a time period. Say, for instance, your children are young, 3, 4, 5. You can look at a 20-year policy that can help address their lifestyle, livelihood as they grow. For my example, when my wife passed away, we we got these policies and they worked to my advantage. When she passed away in 2016, not only did I get the life insurance from her job, but we also had this secondary policy. And I took a huge chunk of that and put away into a bank account to let it be auto drafted because I was dealing with so many other emotional issues and learning circumstances. Then also, I had children. I needed to make sure that they had some form of stability. Both my daughters, they actually played soccer and they played for a soccer club. And that wasn't cheap. But I couldn't take them out of that because for them, soccer was a way to be able to navigate through their emotions. My daughters were cowards on the soccer field. The sweetest things you could ever see until they got on that field. But it allowed them to be able to navigate through their hardships. They were able to bring their aggression out on the field, and that was helpful. Now, another thing I recommend is that you can kill multiple birds by addressing factors of insurance. First thing, when you make the decision to create a bank account, you can focus on you emotionally, mentally getting better. You can help your children do the same. A few things that I was able to do was address that bank account, which is the first thing. Then I was able to address my emotional wherewithal. Also, I addressed how I wanted to make sure that I was being healthier. I learned so many new things. I learned how to cook more healthy. I learned how to exercise. I learned how to get rid of the junk food in the house and to replace it with healthier options. Because remember, the brain, if it's on processed food, it can't think right. The body, you know, getting you're getting happy when you're sitting there chopping away on cookies and chips all day. That is not healthy for you. So I was able to replace that with the exercise. Let me explain exercise. You don't have to be a gym rat. You don't have to be that that guy that goes to the gym constantly to pump iron. There are different ways to be able to address this. You could walk, ride a bike. What I used to do, like I said, my kids were involved in soccer and they love the outdoors. So what I used to do is go with them to the park. And as they kicked the soccer ball around, I would actually play goalie. And that allowed for my body to move and that was exercise. Those serotonin levels increased. And I was able to think better. I was healthier. And then like on top of that, I used to spend time with the girls. Like I said, we would go on nature walks. We would go canoeing. What that did was allow me to build quality time with them. So like I said, I was able to kill multiple birds. I set up that bank account. That was one. The second thing that I was able to do was to exercise, get out there. The third thing I was able to do was to build a bonding time with my girls. Another byproduct is at the end of a lot of our sessions, instead of, you know, going to get some cookies or going to get the chips or whatever, I used to freeze fruit, things like grapes and bananas. These were healthier options. Me and the girls enjoyed them. So at the end of a hard day where we were, you know, training, she was out there, both my girls were out there kicking the ball around and I'm playing goalie. Well, when we were done, come home, I'd open up the fridge and we'd have some of those healthy snacks. Now, don't get me wrong, once in a while, we would go out and treat ourselves, but it wasn't a staple. It was a treat. And also, treating yourself, that works with your mental. It's no longer something you feel like you have to do. It's now something you get the opportunity to do. Doing it once in a while, it's beneficial. It's you don't have to be strict on the health routine 24/7. You can take some time to enjoy yourself a little bit. And doing that and enjoying your kids, I mean, it, it was nothing for me to go out and do ice cream with them once in a while. They enjoyed that as a treat. It wasn't part of the everyday routine. Oh, we're going to get some ice cream after we do this. No. And that extends to everything else. There are some people that do things like go to baseball games or football games, sporting events often. And those tickets aren't cheap. Maybe they go to concerts. Those things aren't cheap. But they do them maybe 3, 4, 5 times a year. And we wonder why our debt levels are so high. And then we wonder why we look at insurance as such a bad word because we feel like we can't afford it. Now, if we make the decision to invest in insurance and treat those obligate those other circumstances as treats versus obligations. Like, I got to do this because in order for me to feel good, I got to, you know. But the reality is, those temporary pleasures, they flee. And the circumstance gets worse when you do not have the resources to back your situation up. My thing is, again, back to the insurance and why single fathers really need to invest. You may not have been able to make it with their mother, but if you have a strong emotional intelligence, a good EQ, you and your child's mother can come together and say, we didn't make it, but we can put a plan in place to make sure that our children are okay because we both love them. And because we both love them, we can do things like cover each other. Now, if you feel that your job insurance is enough, and think about this. The average company, if they give you life insurance, they're providing life insurance to cover for about 1 year's worth of salary. Now, the average salary in America is about $66,000. So you have 1 year's worth of insurance if you pass away at the job. Because if you leave the company and you can't take that term insurance with you at that rate, now you may be able to purchase a whole life insurance policy, which is actually a benefit because you can purchase it without what they call evidence of insurability. You don't have to go through the medical exams and all that stuff in order to get a whole life policy. But remember, that whole life policy is not going to be at the rate that you were paying through your job. It's going to be more expensive. There are a few factors that create that situation. One, you're getting older. And insurance, a big part of insurance is based on age. The younger you are, the cheaper your rates are. Another thing is, remember, when you were working, you were part of a group. So you had a group insurance plan. And that group insurance plan allowed the risks to be spread. Therefore, your rate was cheaper. Now, when you leave the company, whether you get fired or you quit, that's on you. That is not being spread any further. So therefore, the cost is going to go up. That's why I recommend, in addition to having some type of job insurance if you have it, and I definitely urge you to take it if you do. But also, look at purchasing an outside insurance policy and look at a term policy because you could actually get 3 to 4 times your salary for a period of time. And like I said earlier, look at maybe the age of your children and look at how long you want to create your term based off of that. Because you shouldn't have the same obligations when your children are 18, 19 20 that you do now. Now, don't get me wrong. There may be college you have to do. I mean, when my wife passed, my children were 14 and 17. My daughter, my oldest daughter, was leaving for college the next year. So I had to invest in that. My youngest, well, I had to learn how to navigate and live with a 14-year-old and be able to nurture her. What's what has to be looked at is how are you going to create this time horizon for yourself to heal properly, for you to address the mourning process, and for you to develop a learning platform for yourself. And also at the same time, being able to address your children's mental wherewithal and emotional well being. This is why I recommend looking at insurance options. Because, like I said before, you can set up the insurance option through to be able to have a bank account available, and then your bills can be addressed on auto draft. Now you won't have to worry about the calls and the letters and the collection agencies. Plus, those things that you may forget, that grief brain that I talked about, well, those circumstances are covered because you put them on automatic draft. And I keep discussing time horizons because that's important. Listen, mourning, leaving, there is no time period attached to that. But over time, you learn how to manage it. You need time to do that, to be able to properly manage it the way you need to. And you need that time without having those other outside factors stressing you, adding to your anxiety, putting you in a situation where you're feeling depressed. You have those symptoms that are just harming you emotionally and physically. Because, like I said, the brain controls so many other aspects of the human body. And when the brain is not well, then it affects other areas of the body. So, in order to reduce those levels, not mitigate them, reduce them, look at giving yourself a proper time horizon and using insurance can help you. Now, another thing that I talk about with insurance is understanding the aspects of a small whole life policy and using that small whole life policy to help address your burial expenses. Because what you don't want to do is take away from your bread and butter to literally put money in the ground. The average funeral, that's going to run between five and $10,000, $15,000. Now, cremation may run you anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. But either way, you're taking money away from the things that you need to address a circumstance that you're going to spend money to not be able to have any benefit from, with the exception of memory. And that memory is you remembering that that person is no longer here, going to the burial site, or going to the place where you place the ashes. Those things are circumstances that don't need to be taken away from your life insurance policy that's going to help you manage your family. A separate policy, like maybe a $8,000 or $10,000 whole life policy, to help address these expenses, because it's the burial expenses are not just the actual funeral. I mean, you got to look at the cost of the casket, maybe. You got to look at the flowers. You got to look at ceremonial aspects. You have to look at all these different things. And you shouldn't have to take that from your life insurance policy. You should have a separate policy to address that. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I understand that insuring yourself, it's not a cheap thing. But remember, we spend so much money on things that will not give us any type of return. Maybe just give us temporary pleasure. But that temporary pleasure can morph into regret, especially when we realize that we don't have what we need to have to take care of our realities. We look and say, you know what? I spent money on that vacation when I could have used it to address something that I really needed. And now that memory, that temporary satisfaction, ends up becoming a long-term regret. Because in your mind, you feel like you didn't handle it properly. If you have some form of insurance, it means that, hey, you may not be able to go on vacation 4 times a year, 3 times a year. You may not be able to go to 3 or 4 rock concerts. You may not be able to go to a sport event every few months. Turn those things into a treat. So now you can look forward to doing them. And that actually is mentally addressing your circumstance, helping you to feel better. You're anticipating having a great time. And you've also calculated the fact that you have all the other things in place. So now, when you do what you want to do, you can say to yourself comfortably, I can make it happen. That temporary pleasure can become a long-term memory that is not a regret. Understand that. Shift your mind. Stop feeling that insurance is a bad thing, it's taking away. And realize that it's creating opportunity. And like I said, a single parent male, listen, men, we need to understand that we want to make sure that our families are taken care of. We don't want to be that person that says, well, if we pass away, all bets are off, everybody's okay, they can handle their business. On the other side, you don't want to be that person where if your ex passes, you don't want to be bridled with the financial circumstances where your single income may not address you and your family and your needs. Give yourself an opportunity. And that's why I said look at insurance as an opportunity and not as a, oh my God, I got to do. When you shift your mind, you create a doorway that will allow you to be able to see the benefits that will work to your advantage. Like I said, those benefits, they work in the form of you being able to manage your emotions and your mentality within a certain time horizon. Again, you won't mitigate them. What you will do is be able to reduce the levels of stress associated with them. And that's the goal. That's what you want to do. My whole thing is to let people understand the value of actually insuring themselves. This is a benefit and a privilege. This is not an obligation or a burden. Shift your mind to see the benefit over the the, the burdensome thought process, and understand that you rerouting funds to address this situation. I had no idea that my wife was going to pass at 44 years old. I was so blessed that I made preparations. And trust me, everybody called me crazy until it happened. When it happened, people were kind of mad at me that I made the preparations and plans. And again, it's not they were really mad at me. It's that, like I said before, I mean, literally 40% of Americans don't have insurance, and 33% feel that they are underinsured. The average income is about $66,000. And the average amount of insurance is only about $168,000. But yet our debt levels, the average American has about $105,000 in debt. So you can see when you do make plans, there may be people that look at you and they're a little envious. Again, they're not really mad at you. They're mad at the fact that you made preparations and plans that they should have made. Well, you also can't worry about that. Now, you did the things you need to do to take care of your family. You sacrificed and you suffered through. You know, hey, you didn't get to go to all the places that everybody else went to. But you know what? You created memories with your family because you had a product that allowed you to stabilize yourself financially, emotionally, and mentally. And the byproducts of that stemmed so much because now everything that you do becomes a treat. On top of that, you have learned different ways to be able to apply multiple circumstances to one situation to work to your advantage. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I was able to exercise, spend time with the kids, eat better, and have a bank account set up. I killed multiple birds by applying this process. Now, again, this is not about insurance sales or anything of that nature. But if you do want to reach me, you can contact me via email. My information will be in the description notes. I may not be that person that you want to work with, but at least I can share some information with you. This is for entertainment purposes and information purposes only. This is a way for you to be able to gain some valuable knowledge and look at a couple of opportunities that might be helpful to you as you navigate your path. So I hope that I was able to get some valuable information to you. Please do me a favor and like and share. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That information will also be in the show notes. You'll have an opportunity to be able to listen to this podcast on Spotify. You can go to Navigating Single Fatherhood and you can listen to it on Spotify. So on your way home from work or, on your way to work, you can listen to it. You can watch the replays on YouTube. And again, this event is going to be streamed on LinkedIn and YouTube, Facebook. I'm going to try to put it on Instagram, but it's interesting dealing with that. I'm learning all these processes. But again, it goes back to learning. I'm learning all kinds of new things. And take the time to investigate proper avenues of insurance so that you can give yourself a time horizon to manage through the challenges.